Let's begin today by turning to Elisabeth. It's so good to have you here. And let her describe what the book is about, how it came about, and how she got to where she is today in the battle for free speech. Elisabeth?
Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for hosting me here. Thanks also to the Center for Security Policy for your unwavering support in the past 10 years. From the very beginning, you have stood by my side throughout this ordeal. And I'm glad it's over, but actually the battle for truth and truthful speech has just begun. We're not going to stop. We actually have to become stronger. We have to become more unified. So, to answer your question, why did I write this book? It's easy. The book needed to be written. It was always planned, but I wanted the case to be over. And it was over a year ago. Actually, technically, it was over in March of this year when the European Court of Human Rights decided I could no longer appeal their verdict from last October, from October 2018. And throughout the decade of this, again, ordeal, when I was speaking here in the United States, I was always asked, well, when is your book coming out? You have to write about this. This is so crazy. This is so unbelievable. And most of the time when I gave my speeches, I didn't even talk about what's in the book, all my autobiographical information. I just mentioned that I spent part of my childhood here in the United States, which explains why my English is understandable. But I never really got into any of the reasons why I became, or why I turned into the critic, or the Islam critic and free speech activist that I am. And that's what you will find in the book. And so in March, when the appeal was denied, it was the time to sit down and get this book done. And I can tell you, it took me 2.5 months to write this, because I wrote 2,000 words every day. So I got this done. I wanted to get it done for people to be able to read it this year, because this is hot news, actually. And considering what's happening here in the United States, people really need to read it, because it's not only about to happen here, it's actually already over here.
Yes,
With the exception that you still enjoy the protection of the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment, which we do not enjoy in Austria or in Europe as a whole. So that's why the book needed to be written. It's called The Truth is No Defense, which is exactly what happened. The truth is no defense. I think Steve Coggan will tell you the story about how we were told in Vienna that the truth can sometimes be considered hate speech. That is another reason why the book needs to be called The Truth is No Defense. And I'm finally, thank you so much also to everybody here on the panel for contributing, for making this book an even better book. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Wonderful, Elisabeth. I think the best way to describe you perhaps is a champion of free speech. Briefly, before we move to our other panel members here, could you tell our audience today, just a little bit in an encapsulated form, what your case was about? What was that legal case?
The legal case was about my right to describe the truth as it is, to call a spade a spade. To just recap, I gave a seminar in Vienna, a 12-hour seminar. I said a lot of things. The seminars were fully sourced. Nothing I said was untrue. And as the seminars grew more popular, a young journalist surreptitiously came to the seminar and recorded the seminars, and then a transcript was handed over to the prosecutor's office, who
What were the seminars about? Let's describe for the audience what they were about.
The seminars discussed Islam and its effect on Austrian and European societies. So what I did was describe Muhammad's life and the Quran and the Sirah, his life, his biography, and how this all affects us, because as we all know, and perhaps people do not know, but they need to know, Islam doesn't concern itself with Muslims, with those who adhere to the Muslim faith, but it also targets us. We are also, we non-Muslims, whatever denomination or faith we are an important part of the Muslim faith. I think we need to call it that way. What Sharia law does, and all of you know this probably even better than I will ever understand it, but Sharia law governs the relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims. So that's why we are targeted as well, and we need to know about Islam, because if we don't know about Islam, it's to our detriment. So that's what I was trying to do back starting in 2008. One of the sentences, or part of the discussion, was Muhammad's life, and I described how he married a 6-year-old and consummated the marriage when the girl was 9 years old, which is part of scripture, which is part of Islamic scripture. And I asked a rhetorical question, which was, what do we call this behavior if not pedophilia? Now note that I did not say Muhammad was a pedophile, and this and that has to happen. I said, what do we call it if not pedophilia? Because we're not allowed to call it pedophilia. I know that. That's against the law in Austria. So I wanted to search for another word, knowing that there is no other word than to call this behavior pedophilia. And thank God for the First Amendment that I enjoy here, First Amendment protections that I enjoy here in the United States, because I would not be able to say these words in Austria.
And so somebody then reported you.
Yes, they reported me. It was, I want to make it very clear, it was not a Muslim who reported me. The Muslim community actually didn't really care much. Why? Because they knew that the dirty job would be done by someone else. And they reported me. I then faced trial for incitement to hatred. The trial made it very clear that there was no incitement to hatred ever. But the judge, at her own discretion, which sounds ludicrous to everybody here in the United States, the judge at her own discretion during the proceedings added another charge, which was denigration of religious teachings, which is a blasphemy charge. And that ended the trial. It was very clear that I would be found guilty. I got a fine. I was forced to pay that fine. I wanted to go to jail, could not go to jail for certain legal procedural reasons. And I fought this charge all the way to the Austrian Supreme Court, lost all the way. The reasons for denying me my right to freedom of speech became more ludicrous with every legal step that I took. And finally, after losing at the Supreme Court, I then appealed to the European Court of Human Rights, which is a supranational court of not the European Union, but the Council of Europe, which includes such freedom-loving countries as Azerbaijan.
Oh dear.
And of course, I lost.
All right.
To the detriment of free people in Europe.
All free people everywhere.
All free people
Not just
everywhere.
yourself.
Yes.